Good day, Year 9. This is our topic about reproduction in humans. Of course, we have explained some of this, so I'm going to start again from the beginning, reviewing everything that we spoke about earlier, and then continue with any topics that we did not finish in class. So, reproduction. Where do babies come from? Is it like the stories that they told us when we were young babies? No, it's not. No, it's different. So let's start. To create a new human, a male sperm, which is a gamete, must fuse with a female egg. Fuse means join, so these two egg cell and sperm cell, they have to join together. First of all, we have to know that in any normal human cell, there are 46 chromosomes. Chromosomes are part of our DNA. So we have a big molecule called the DNA. It is divided into smaller parts. Each part is called a chromosome. This is a part that we can see under the microscope when a cell starts to divide. We notice about cells that are for reproduction, egg cells and sperm cells, there are only half of these chromosomes in each of these cells, which is common sense because we want to make these two cells join together. And when they join together, we get 23 from this cell plus 23 from the other cell. So the total goes back to 46 chromosomes, which makes a human being. So this is what happens. When 46 chromosomes are formed by the fusion or the joining of two gamete cells, we call this now a zygote. A zygote is a cell produced by the joining of two sex cells or two gamete cells. Okay, so we need to remember this word. We took it before when we were studying reproduction in plants, if you remember. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to look into detail of the structure of a sperm and an egg. Another name for an egg is an ovum. Let's look first at a sperm. The sperm is made up of a part at the beginning called the head. Sorry, it is the part that contains a nucleus. And this again, reminding you that this is a nucleus containing only half of the chromosomes that a normal human cell would have. So it has 23 chromosomes. We call a cell that has half the number of chromosomes a haploid cell. Haploid cell. We're going to take this again when we go into the topic of inheritance and genetics and inheritance. Okay, so it starts off with an head, and then we have a part called a neck. Sometimes they call it a middle piece. And then we have a very long tail. And the tail obviously is needed for moving and swimming. So the sperms are supposed to be swimming to reach the eggs. When comparing the size, the sperm cells are much smaller than the egg cells. The sperms are produced in vast numbers. Maybe 2 million cells can be present in one ejaculation, while a female only produces one egg every month. So there's a big difference here and there. The egg, when we look at the structure of the egg in the diagram on the bottom right hand side, the nucleus contains again 23 chromosomes. Again, this cell will be called a haploid cell. The nucleus is surrounded with the normal cytoplasm, and there is a jelly coat to help the cell stay having its own nutrients and staying healthy. Here now we have a little bit more details. An egg cell is usually again, there's a nucleus, remember, and then a cytoplasm around it, a jelly coat. Again, these are the same things that we just spoke about. But then the cell inside the ovary is surrounded by follicle. A follicle is like a cover, and these follicle cells help the egg cell to become bigger and help it to become mature. So all the egg cells in a female's ovary are small and they're not mature. Only one egg becomes mature with the help of this follicle around it. The cells around this egg help it to become mature. It also produces the estrogen hormone. And then when the egg is released from the ovary, a process that we will call ovulation, then it comes out of this follicle. So the follicle is not surrounding it when ovulation happens. Another detail that we want to speak about in the sperm cell, there is a small part at the very pointed end of the head. It's called an acrosome. And an acrosome contains enzymes that help to digest its path into the jelly coat of the ovum. The jelly coat is a barrier, and the sperm that is quick enough to digest its way into this barrier will be the first one to uh, enter the egg. And when it enters the egg is now fertilized and no other sperms will be able to enter the egg. So it's a mechanism by which the egg helps that only one sperm can enter and fertilize it. All right. This is the shape of the cells, sperm cells and egg cells. So, now we're going to talk about the primary and secondary sexual characteristics. Sexual characteristics or sexual changes, these are features that we observe when a male or a female person changes from a child and becomes an adult. These changes take several years, by the way, and this period of time, when the changes start until they are all complete, we call this period of time puberty or adolescence. So, this is the time when a person goes through changes in the body, so he becomes an adult or she. So, testosterone hormone, it is produced in males, and this allows the males to have certain changes. The first of all, and the most important of all, it is the ability to produce sperms. So, this person is now able to have sperms in their body. The growth of reproductive organs is also something that we notice when a person goes through puberty. There is also growth of body hair, facial hair on the face, underarms, on the chest for males, and also on the groin area. There is an increased muscular growth. The muscles of the body, they increase in size, and also the shoulders, they become broader, which changes the shape of the body. There is also the deepening of voice and also growth of bones. One other thing that I would like to add is the sweat glands. They start to become more active because this body has now more muscles. It will be heating up more when a person moves around. So we have to have an active cooling system. This is also in females. The activation of the more active sweat glands. Now, I want to make sure that you understand the difference between primary and secondary sexual characteristics. A primary sexual characteristic is that is involved only in the reproductive organs. So, which points do you think are primary sexual characteristics for males? They are the first 2 points, the production of sperms and the growth of reproductive organs. The rest is considered a secondary sexual characteristic. Now, estrogen hormone in females is the hormone responsible for the changes in the body. So, what does estrogen hormone help females? They help the maturation or production of eggs. So, the eggs become mature only because now the female body is able to produce this estrogen hormone. Also, growth of reproductive organs and the beginning of a menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle is a cycle that keeps repeating every month. We will talk in more detail about this menstrual cycle. It is a way the body prepares itself for becoming pregnant. Growth of hair. Now, many of us would quickly write an answer about give an example of a secondary sexual characteristic, and we would write growth of hair. Sorry, this will not be awarded a mark because since the beginning of our life, our hair on the top of our heads grows. So it is not correct to say growth of hair. This is for males and females. We should say growth of body hair. Okay, so please make sure that you write body hair, not hair. Okay, now in females, there is also the development of breasts. The breasts grow in size. The deposition of fats on the hips and thighs, so the changes in the body, the shape of the body again changes. Also, we can add the point of the activation, the sweat glands become more active. Here, which are the characteristics that are considered primary? Can you think with us in females? It is the production of eggs, the growth of reproductive organs, and the beginning of the menstrual cycle. So, all these three characteristics are primary sexual characteristics. The three other ones, growth of body hair, development of breasts, deposition of fats, are considered secondary sexual characteristics. Now we're going to look at the male reproductive system. This is a side view of the male reproductive system. We will start where everything starts. We will start with the sperm tubule in the testis. It is where the sperms are made. So, this is a factory for making sperms. The sperms, upon ejaculation, will move out through this yellow long path, this tube, we're going to call it the sperm tube, where sperms are released. And because they are not able to swim yet, because there are no liquid around them, they will move out by peristalsis. If you remember peristalsis, we spoke about it when we talked about digestive systems, and it is a wave of contraction that helps to move things along a tube. All right, so the sperms move out of the sperm tube, and then it meets with two glands. One of them here is a little pink in color. It is called the seminal vesicle, and there is another one, orange in color. It is the prostate gland. These two glands are responsible for producing a fluid through which the sperms will be swimming. The fluid has several chemicals. Some of them will help the sperms to stay alive, so they are nutrients. Some of them will help to make the path, neutralize the path in which the sperms will flow. So if it's acidic pathway, usually the seminal vesicle and prostate glands produce an alkaline solution to help neutralize anything that is acidic in the way of the sperms to help them stay alive. Then at the end, this tube comes out of the penis. The penis is an organ that has the ability to be filled with blood, and when it fills with blood, it becomes erect. It becomes a bit harder. All right. Here we have just an explanation of where the digestive system ends. So this is the rectum at the end of the diagram, and the anus, the opening of the digestive system. So just to know where is everything. This this is the same diagram, but we look now at a front view of the reproductive system here to make sure that people understand there are two testes on the side, each side of the penis. The testis is inside a sac. We did not mention the name of this sac. It is called a scrotum, and this has a special importance because we have now understood that sperms are only able to be made at a temperature below the human body temperature, usually at 35 degrees Celsius. If this testis was inside the body, this will not be a suitable temperature for making sperms. So this is why they are hanging in a sac outside the body so that the temperature would be more suitable. Here also we can see something, the tube at the very top, you can see that there is a label. If you see the sperm tube, it joins with another tube. And here I have a question for you. What tube do you think this is? It is a tube that carries a liquid that usually flows out of, yes, it is called the urethra. Yes, the urethra is the tube that carries urine out of the body of a male person and also in a female, but the urethra in the males can either carry urine or carry semen. Semen is a word that we use when we have the fluids that come from the seminal vesicles, so the seminal fluids, and the sperms as well. So semen means sperm plus seminal fluids, okay? The urethra can only allow one of each liquids to come out at a time. So it's either the person is urinating and urine is coming out of the penis, or this person is ejaculating and semen is coming out of the penis. So each only has one time to flow out. All right. Now we're going to look at the female reproductive system. Now we're going to look at the female reproductive system. This is also a side view. We also want to start where the eggs are found. So looking here, this part is called the ovary. It is where the eggs are found, and only one egg cell is produced every month outside of this ovary. When it goes outside of the ovary, it reaches the oviduct, which is a small tube leading into the uterus. The uterus is a bigger organ, and it is the place where the egg that is fertilized, it will start to grow into a new baby. The uterus has two walls. The first wall is a thin wall that has many blood vessels. We call it sometimes the endometrium, sometimes we call it the uterus lining or the bloody lining. Any of those is a correct way to describe it. And then the wall beneath that is a wall made of muscles. And these muscles will grow bigger as pregnancy starts to develop, so the muscles can push the baby out at the end of the pregnancy. The uterus leads into an opening, and the opening of the uterus is called the cervix. We don't have a label for it here. You will see it in the next diagram. And the cervix is the end part of the uterus is embedded in the vagina, which is a long tube through which the ejaculation takes place of the penis. So the penis is inserted into this vagina during sexual intercourse, and the semen is produced at the end of the vagina where the cervix is. The urethra, as you can see, is in different place. It's not near the vagina, so it is before the vagina, and the anus is another opening at the end of the diagram over here. This is just to know the positions of each and every part. Looking here at a frontal view of the reproductive system of a female, we now see that there are also two ovaries. So just like in males, they have two testes. In females, there are two ovaries. And the ovary is, yes, this circular organ. The ovary has an oviduct attached to it, and the oviduct is a long tube. There is also another name for the oviduct. It is sometimes called the fallopian tube. So you have to be familiar with both names, fallopian or oviduct. Then the uterus is the part that is in the middle. It is a very the biggest part in the reproductive system, and it has a lining. Remember, it is lined. This is called the uterus lining. It is rich in blood vessels, and yes, the muscular wall is a layer beneath that layer. Here is where the cervix, it is the beginning part of the opening of the uterus as we speak. This is the cervix that this part is the part that will become bigger in size, or it will dilate. The meaning of dilate is it becomes wider. It dilates when labor takes place to allow the uh, baby to leave the uterus. Okay, so this is the importance of the cervix. And the cervix, before the cervix, we have the vagina. All right, so these are the main parts of the female reproductive system. Moving on. Here we're going to look at the menstrual cycle. In the menstrual cycle, uh, it is an average of 28 days. Not all ladies have the same number of days, but on average, we have found that mostly 28 days is the number that most ladies have. It begins with the shedding or the loss of the uterus lining. The blood vessels that were rich, waiting for the egg cell the fertilized egg cell to become embedded into them. They find that there is no fertilization took place, so the shedding of the bloody lining happens. So bleeding happens. This blood is lost out of the vagina through the first days of the menstrual cycle. It could be 5 days long, more or less. Then the days go by and ovulation takes place in the middle of the cycle. So, oh yes, so here the first 5 days we call it menstruation, the first 5 days, and here the second days we call them ovulation. Ovulation happens in the mid cycle and only one day. It's either 14 or 13 or 15. It is one of these days when an egg is released, only one egg is released from either one of the ovaries that are found in a female body. Okay, so only one egg is released usually, and this is called ovulation. When ovulation happens, the female is now fertile. The word fertile, by which we mean, is that she is able to become pregnant. So, this is the time when, if a couple wants to have a baby, this is the time when a couple should be deciding to have sexual intercourse. The days before and after ovulation are also the time when a lady is still fertile. So the days between 11, 12, 16, and 17, it depends on how many days the egg or the sperm survives. So it's usually a couple of days before and a couple of days after. We usually take 2 days before and 2 days after. So between days 12 and days 16, this is the time when the female is most fertile and she can have a baby if sexual intercourse happens at that time. The other days are days where she cannot become pregnant. So if a couple want not to have a baby, then these other days are the days which are useful. Oh, it's good for the couple to have sexual intercourse at that time. Next. Here we have a diagram. I know it looks a bit complicated, but let's take it one by one. This is a diagram that shows the sequence of events during the 28 days of a menstrual cycle. Just a different way of drawing things. So if we look at days 0 to 5 at the bottom left hand side, this is a drawing of how thick the wall of the uterus is. And if you notice from day 0 to day 5, the thickness of the uterus starts to decrease. And again, reminding you, this is called menstruation, the loss or shedding of blood from the uterus passing out of the vagina. All right? At this time, the levels of hormones are very, very low. a very low amount of estrogen and a very low amount of progesterone. These are the hormones that orchestrate or control the menstrual cycle. So now we notice if we follow the estrogen, let's look. Here is the line showing the level of estrogen during the month. It starts to increase after menstruation and it peaks, becomes the highest on the day of the middle day of the cycle. If we follow the eggs at the top diagram, the egg is a small yellow circle with a nucleus black in color, and it's surrounded with a follicle, and this follicle starts to mature, becomes bigger, and on the day of ovulation, here, ovulation, where estrogen was the highest level, the egg is now released from the ovary. This process, again, we call it ovulation. The egg is released from the ovary. The follicle stays inside the ovary, but the egg comes out. And now it goes into the oviduct, as you remember, and it waits for sperms to come fertilize it. The estrogen hormone, if you notice, let's look at the bottom diagram, you will notice that when the estrogen hormone started to increase in amount, in concentration, the wall of the uterus started to build itself. So estrogen has two roles. It helps to rebuild the wall of the uterus and it helps ovulation to take place. The next hormone is progesterone, and following this line starts to increase in concentration after the middle day, after day 14. And when it increases, the wall of the uterus also increases in thickness. It is more rich with blood vessels. It is now ready for the receiving of the embryo, the fertilized egg. Okay. Now, this, if no egg is fertilized, the progesterone hormone starts to drop again on the maybe let's say 25th day or so. And when it drops down, both hormones, when they both drop, the menstrual cycle will start to begin again. So this is the time when the hormones, either estrogen or progesterone, are at their lowest concentration in the female body. So that's why menstruation starts all over again. But what if this egg was fertilized? What would happen? Let's look again at the progesterone. This is the level. It will remain high, it will not fall. And this will help the pregnancy to continue because if the wall of the uterus starts to break down, then the pregnancy is ended and the baby or the egg that was fertilized, the embryo, will fall as the bloody lining starts to fall. All right? So, this is a small explanation about the menstrual cycle. Let's look at the hormones that are responsible for each and every part of the reproductive system. We're going to revise. So remember, testosterone, where is it secreted from? From the testis. What does it have? What is the role of this hormone? What does it do? It is responsible for the development of the primary and secondary sexual characteristics. What is the effect that it has on the body? It causes sperm production, it causes increase in height, it helps the body and the pubic hair, the body hair and the pubic hair to grow, the enlargement of reproductive organs and deepening of voice. This is just a revision of the things that we spoke about earlier. Progesterone, on the other hand, is produced in the ovary. It controls the menstrual cycle, and maintains pregnancy. Maintains pregnancy means it keeps it going on, so it doesn't stop. The effect that it has on the body, progesterone thickens and maintains the wall of the uterus. Finally, estrogen. It is also produced in the ovary. The estrogen hormone is important in the development of the primary and secondary sexual characteristics. It is responsible for the egg production, its effect on the body is also the beginning of menstrual cycles in females. It helps the growth of body hair, the development of breasts, fat deposition on the hips and thighs. It helps to repair the wall of the uterus. So we need to remember those. We need to memorize these different roles, and effects of each of these three hormones. Please make sure that you have this table filled in your um, study guide. Okay. Now we're going to look into the steps that help a baby become formed. So the ovary over here has just released the egg. What do we call this? Can you remember? It is ovulation. The release of an egg from an ovary is called ovulation. And now the egg remains in the oviduct. It stays in the oviduct until the sperms come swimming through the cervix, through the uterus. Some of them will get lost and go the other oviduct. Some of them are lucky and they find their way through the right oviduct, and they find their way into the oviduct to reach the egg. And maybe one of them will be lucky to enter into the egg, and the nucleus of that sperm cell will fuse with the nucleus, and this is called fertilization. And now we have a zygote. Here the zygote divides, and when it divides, we have two exact cells. So this is the first step. After fertilization, the zygote starts to divide. I want you to remember this word, zygote, because then we're going to give it a different name. These two cells keep on dividing, each cell giving us two more cells, and each cell will divide into two more cells. And we have at the end a ball of cells, a group of cells. So in the same shape of a ball, we have many small cells that are all identical. They're all the same. They share the same 46 chromosomes. So now we're going to give it a different name. This ball of cells is called an embryo. It changes, it becomes an embryo. So we have to remember this word, embryo. All right? So after the zygote divides, having many cells that are similar together, we have a ball of cells, and now this ball of cells, we call it an embryo. This embryo will leave the oviduct, and the oviduct, by the way, is lined with cells that have cilia. Remember ciliated cells? These cells keep moving different things in the respiratory system. It moves the mucus out of the respiratory system. Here we have these ciliated cells. They will help to move the egg because the egg has no way of moving on its own. They will help to move the egg out of the oviduct and into the uterus. And as soon as the fertilized egg, or the embryo now, we're calling it now the embryo, when this embryo starts to sink or to embed itself into the wall of the uterus, this now is called implantation. I like to remember the word plant because if you want to start a plant growing, you take the seed and you put it into the soil. So it's something very similar to that. This embryo sinks into the wall of the uterus and it starts to grow a placenta, and this placenta starts to take the nutrients from the blood around it so that the baby can start to grow. When the baby starts to have a definite shape, we call it now a fetus. So we started with an egg that was fertilized and we gave it a different name. We called it a zygote. And then the zygote started to divide into many cells, and now the cells, this ball of cells was called an embryo. And then this ball of cells starts to take form, the shape of a human being, and now we give it a different name. We call it a fetus. Okay? So we have different names for every stage. Now, how will the fetus get the nutrients that it needs so that it grows? Yes, it has a tube that comes out of its body. It's called the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord has two blood vessels. One blood vessel carrying blood away from the baby, from the fetus, towards the placenta, and the second blood vessel takes the blood back from the placenta to the baby. And we want to make sure that we don't mix them up, which is called an artery and which is called a vein. The artery is the one that takes blood away from the baby. So this is called the umbilical artery. The second one takes the blood back to the baby and it's called an umbilical vein. So this is umbilical artery taking the blood away from the baby, just like the arteries that take the blood away from our heart. Okay, let's try to remember it this way. And the blood that comes back to the baby is called the umbilical vein. It flows in the umbilical vein. Now, look at this, yes, this section. We're going to enlarge it at the right hand corner. This is where blood of the baby and the blood of the mother are very close to one another to allow diffusion of chemicals from this blood to that, from the mother to the baby and from the baby to the mother. Okay? This is because it is very important that the blood of the mother does not mix with the blood of the child. Now, before we ask why, what things do you expect will leave the baby's blood and go to the mother's blood? Do you have an idea? Of course, carbon dioxide, with also urea, could both diffuse out of the baby's blood into the mother. So, and what diffuses in the other way around from the mother to the baby is the oxygen, of course, and any nutrients that will help the child to grow. So, if there's glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, iron, calcium, all of these nutrients will go by diffusion from the mother's blood to the baby's blood. Why don't the blood of the mother and the baby mix? Why is it important that they do not mix? It's important because the mother has blood flowing at a very high pressure. She has a bigger heart that pumps blood with high pressure. And if the blood of the mother flows into the baby's small and delicate and still forming blood vessels, they will burst the blood vessels of the baby and he will die instantly. So the blood of the mother should not be allowed to enter the blood vessels of a baby. Also, the blood of the mother could be a different type. Maybe she is blood type A and the baby is blood type B. And if the mother blood notices that there is different blood type, her white blood cells will start making antibodies and kill the red blood cells of a baby, which is going to end the pregnancy. Okay, so this is why. What harmful substances pass from the placenta to the fetus? We only spoke about the good things, oxygen, glucose, fatty acids, glycerol, and so forth. But what harmful substances can pass from the placenta to the fetus? Some chemicals like nicotine, if she's a smoker, alcohol, if she drinks alcohol, um, if she is taking drugs like heroin, like cocaine, it also will pass to the baby. If she has some viruses like HIV, the baby will also be born with the same condition. He will also be suffering from AIDS. If she has a certain virus like rubella virus, which is a dangerous virus because it will cause the child damage and he will be born with he will be born deaf and blind because of this. So the mother, before getting pregnant, she must have a shot of a vaccine for the rubella virus. Next. Now we're going to talk about the fetus and the different things that surround him. Now, this large part labeled A is the placenta. It is the place where we just explained where the different substances are exchanged between the baby and the mother's blood. The B tube is a tube that takes blood into the baby and out of the baby. This is the umbilical cord, yes. And we don't call him a baby scientifically, he is called a fetus. So C is a fetus. D is the opening of the uterus. Usually it is very closed, very tight during the pregnancy, and at the end of the pregnancy it starts to widen to allow the baby out. This is called the cervix. E is a membrane that helps to hold the baby with the surrounding fluid so that he is protected from anything. This is called the amniotic sac. It is to protect the baby, and it produces the liquid that surrounds the baby. This liquid is very important. It's called the amniotic fluid, and it helps the baby to move freely, and it acts like a shock absorber to prevent the baby from any damage by any hit. If the mother has an accident, the baby is not affected. Okay. The roles of the placenta. What does the placenta do? The placenta, again, to remind you, is a place where the blood vessels of a child or the growing fetus is in very close contact to the blood of a mother. It allows we're going to see what happens. First, it prevents harmful substances from the mother's blood from reaching the fetus. Some chemicals, fortunately, do not pass through to the baby. Uh, it secretes also hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that help to maintain the thick bloody lining and to prevent miscarriage, so the baby does not to make sure that the baby is safe, he is well attached, he is surviving. So the instead of the follicle doing the job of production of estrogen and progesterone, as soon as the placenta is big enough, it starts to produce its own hormones. Also, this prevents ovulation so that no more eggs are produced. It's a waste. Why should we produce more eggs? We are now pregnant, so there is no need to have more eggs to become mature. It allows the transfer of substances between the mother and the baby's blood. So let's think again of what the chemicals, which chemicals are transferred. Oxygen, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, vitamins, minerals, antibodies, and some harmful stuff like nicotine, drugs, and some viruses. These can cross through the placenta and reach the baby's blood through the umbilical vein. So some of them are useful, some of them are harmful. A pregnant woman should try to make sure she is far away from the harmful substances that can pass to her child. Carbon dioxide and urea can pass out of the umbilical artery to the mother's blood. All of this happens by diffusion. The placenta prevents the mixing of the mother and fetus blood, as we said, because the mother's blood pressure is too high, it will damage the fetus blood vessels. And if they have different blood types, usually, yes, it does happen many times that the mother has a different blood type than her child. So the red blood cells of the child will clump together because of the immune system of the mother, and this will cause the death of the fetus. Antenatal care. The word anti means before, natal before birth. So this is what a woman should do when she's pregnant. How should she take care of her self and her health so that her baby is born healthy? So the diet should be modified to provide the necessary nutrients for the growth and development of the baby. What things do you think she should have? She should concentrate upon having in her diet? I think proteins, yes, a larger portion of proteins should be in her diet to make sure that the child has enough proteins to make his own new cells. Also, calcium is a very important nutrient because the baby needs to make his own bones. And if a lady does not make sure she has enough calcium in her diet, usually a child will be taking some of the calcium from her own bones, which will weaken her bones every time she has a child. So a pregnant woman should make sure she gets enough calcium. Iron is very important for the baby to make his hemoglobin. So if the baby doesn't have enough hemoglobin, he will not be able to respire. There's not enough oxygen carried to his blood. So the child will be growing very slowly. He might be small in size. The organs might not be fully developed. It's not good for a child. Usually, a lady must make sure she gets enough iron. The carbohydrates and fats also have to be increased a little bit, a little enough so that the baby and the mother have enough energy so the cells can divide, increase in size, so the baby can have enough energy to respire and so forth. The mother also must receive vaccination against some viruses. Remember, we talked about the rubella virus. So she must make sure she had this vaccination before she got married so that her baby is safe. She should also exercise, and one of the good exercises a woman can have when she's pregnant is swimming. It takes away the weight of her bones, so their joints are not affected. Exercising is important and it helps her to keep her fit. So when the time of delivery comes, she is still healthy and fit. She should also avoid alcohol, smoking, and any drugs. Birth or delivery or labor. The three words mean the same thing. It is when the baby leaves out of the female body at the time when he is fully grown. This is the delivery. Usually, pregnancy lasts for 9 months after fertilization. The baby is fully grown and the baby moves so that his head is facing downwards. It starts when the muscles of the uterus start to contract. The contractions are weak at first, uh, just like a small cramp, and then the contractions increase in intensity. They become stronger, and the frequency at which they recur increases, so there are less gaps between a contraction and another. It's just like a warning for the woman that she is coming into labor, so she should get herself ready, have people to help her so that she goes to a hospital or have a doctor nearby so that she gives birth. When the contractions are very strong, one of the first things that happen is that the amniotic sac, remember, the one that keeps the baby and the amniotic fluid in one place, it breaks, and when it breaks, it releases the amniotic fluid. That works for two good things. It sterilizes, removes, as if it washes out any microbes, any bacteria that are found in the vagina, in the birth canal. Now we're going to call it the birth canal, where the baby will come out so that his body is not affected by any microbes. It also will help the baby to slip or slide out of the birth canal. As soon as the baby's head passes out, the rest of the body passes out quickly, slides out quickly. The contractions are the ones that help to push the baby out. The baby's umbilical cord, as soon as he's born, is clamped and cut by the doctor. A short while after the baby is born, a new wave of contractions cause the placenta to separate and pass out of the vagina. We call that the delivery of the afterbirth. This concludes our chapter. I hope everything is clear now for everyone. If you have any questions, please send me as usual on my Facebook Messenger. Have a lovely day, everyone. Goodbye.